How's it going? Awesome, Mayo here. And you know, I get a lot of questions from real estate investors and people in real estate about all sorts of different things. Here are just a few of the major questions I get. People always ask, Awesome, how do I get more and better motivated sellers? I get all sorts of questions about motivated sellers. Also, people always ask, Awesome, what's the best way to get started in real estate? And can I really start from zero and make 10 to 30 grand a month? And what are the problems and pitfalls people fall into? And how can I avoid them? Also, Awesome, how do I buy real estate with no money down? And companies also, but real estate with no money down, no credit checks, no loans, etc. So today I'm going to answer these questions and a whole lot more. This is a 3-part series. First, you and I are going to go over the biggest secret in the world about motivated sellers. Then we'll go over the only 2 ways that you'll ever get your business to 30 grand a month and beyond. And then for the rest of the series, you and I are going to go over 30 ways. Actually, there's more than 30 ways, but 30 ways to buy real estate zero down. And you're going to hear and learn about all sorts of examples about students and all the crazy stuff they're doing, the awesome, amazing stuff that they're doing. And today, right now, even while ordinary investors are scrambling to find their mouthpiece, our students are making a killing. And by the time we're done here, you're going to see why and how. Okay? Okay. Now, before we get started, let me cover something up front. Most people in real estate, especially investors who are starting out, are pretty clueless about what they're doing. Now, that's not their fault. No one's born with this stuff. So being clueless, that's not necessarily their fault, unless they stay that way, which most people do. But in addition to that, what's much, much worse than that is that they're really, really lazy. And this combination of incompetence and unwillingness to strive, it creates a breed of people that cause problems for everybody, even if they don't know it. Cause problems for everybody. So I'll put it this way, my stuff is only for you if you're serious, and not just about building a company for yourself. And notice I said company, not a job like almost all investors do, but building a real company for yourself and for others, but also building it around actually helping people and doing what's in their best interest. And that means when it comes to buying real estate zero down, you need to remember that there are other people involved, buyers and sellers, for example. So when you put a deal together, you want to make sure that they're happy, that they're getting what's in their best interest. Doing deals creatively doesn't mean that you take advantage of people, or you beat them up on price, or you use tough guy negotiating, or used car salesman tactics, you brag about how well you talk the seller down on price. None of that stuff. Use the mom principle. Basically, whenever you work on a deal or you put something together, ask yourself what you would think if someone did the same thing with your mother. And take that even further. Most investors are just trying to make a quick buck. They want to do as little as possible. They want to learn as little as possible. And at every turn, they're going to cut as many corners as possible. They'll even admit and take guidance from people who admit and even brag about being lazy. Would you want your mother to trust someone like that? Of course not. And that's my point. These approaches, these strategies, techniques, you are going to be doing this stuff with somebody's mother, father, sister, brother, son, daughter. So please keep that in mind. These are people that you actually want to help. You can build empire after empire around helping people. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. And the things we're going to talk about later can be used to take advantage of people, but that is not my intent and it should not be yours. And I know that a shady person may not be completely dissuaded by me just because I said that, but sometimes it's not so obvious if you're the bad guy. I've seen a lot of good people that just, when they tell me what they're doing, I ask them if they would want someone doing that with their mother, and they have to say no. It's not always obvious if you're the bad guy, especially if you don't know what you're doing or you're untrained and you take bad advice. It may not be so obvious that it's bad advice. So just use the mom principle with everything that you do and you should be good. If you ever have to wonder or ask if you're doing the right thing, you're probably not. So let's work together and be better people, all right? All right. Now let's talk about what I'm about to say is something that I've never heard anyone say, and it's like the most important lesson in all of real estate. So this is something really, really important, and it has to do with motivated sellers. Motivated sellers. If you've spent any time in real estate seminar world, you've heard all about them. Motivated sellers, they all talk about it. All those guys do is talk about motivated sellers, but here's the truth. It's all a lie. And I'll tell you, this might be the biggest lie in real estate. Now, if you're one of those people out there chasing motivated sellers just like everybody else, then you have been lied to. You've been taken advantage of, and you are spinning your wheels. The good news is that you're here now, so we can fix it. Motivated sellers, this isn't just the biggest lie in real estate. This might be the biggest lie in business ever. Every seller is motivated. When investors talk about motivated sellers, this has become a one-size-fits-all shield that they use to defend their own shortcomings. It's not my fault. The seller just isn't motivated enough. And this is also a great tool for people who teach outdated or ineffective strategies, because anybody who rejects their awful solution just isn't motivated enough. If you taught something that didn't work or just, really sucked, instead of getting better, it's much easier to blame the people who think it sucks. This concept of motivated sellers has come to be a crutch that's used to justify all manner of incompetence. To see how crazy this is, imagine if a cook at a restaurant served dinner and the plates were covered with cockroaches, and when customers complained, he said, well, I guess they're just not motivated enough. What would the restaurant say? That our food only tastes good if you're starving? And if people complain, if their customers complain, then they blame their customer's motivation. Why isn't the problem the cook and his refusal to become a better cook? It's obvious in that example, right? Well, this is exactly what people in real estate do. Whether it's the right motivated seller or the right market or the right planetary alignment or whatever, these are all excuses that they use to deflect responsibility and blame something other than the fact that they really don't know what they're doing. They're just not that good at what they're doing. They're unskilled. You don't want to be like that. Don't be a person who looks for starving crowds, because they don't stay starving and they don't stay crowds. They attract competition, and ultimately your skill will be the factor in how well you do, not the motivation of others, but how motivated you get them about you. You don't need motivated sellers or motivated anybody. You need sellers motivated to work with you, people motivated to work with you. This is totally different. There's a huge difference. Just think about the concept of motivated sellers for a second, because the worse you are, the more motivated people have to be to work with you. If you're in a position where you feel like you need motivated sellers or you can't find enough, the real question you should be asking yourself, the question that'll change your life if you get to the root of it, the real question isn't how do I find more motivated sellers, but the real question is why do people have to be so motivated before they want to work with me? Too many investors engage in what we call ambulance chaser investing. They hunt people down who had a death in the family, or they hound people who are in divorce or just got laid off or are about to lose their house. And think about what that says. If you have to talk to people who are morbidly depressed or suicidal or going through gutting heartbreak, if people have to be in dire situations like that in order for them to want to hear what you have to say, isn't it time to have better stuff to say? You know, there are investors who see dollar signs whenever they hear about somebody dying or losing their home or their kids get kidnapped or whatever. And if that's what excites somebody about their business, shouldn't they find a better way to do business? What I'm saying sounds crazy, I know. In the context of what's being taught in real estate, I know this sounds nuts, but just use common sense. If somebody has to have a sequence of tragedies happen in their life, if that's what's needed before they want to do business with you, what does that say about the way that you do business? You see what I'm saying? Now, the reason that this has lasted for so long is because so many people are lost, and sometimes you only know bad advice if you've ever gotten good advice. And my point here is that being a vulture or an ambulance chaser or a profiteer of misfortune is not a way to build a business or a life. And yes, people in those situations do need help, but do they need it from inexperienced and unskilled investors who are faking it till they make it, looking up answers as they go and only doing it for the money? Would you want your family to trust somebody like that? Then why would you do that to somebody else's? This has caused all sorts of misery and pain for people, and not just the families in trouble who trusted the wrong people, but even for the good-intentioned investors who they themselves trusted the wrong people and followed bad advice because they didn't know any better. And it's avoidable if you just use common sense. You want more than a business. You want an empire. That's the kind of people that I attract. I get that. I see that. I know that. But the real question is, how do you want to build that empire? It matters, right? You don't want to build it that way. That's just what people resort to when they're too scared to compete on merit. You want to build your empire the right way. You know, with motivated sellers, with that as the criteria, or in general, the higher the criteria, the more criteria that must be met before you know how to make money, the more that needs to happen before you know how to make money, the worse you are at making money. If somebody has to be going through disasters in order for you to know how to do business with them, isn't it a sign that you need to get better at knowing how to do business? If somebody has to be, going through calamity and devastation before what you have to say to them makes any sense, then what you have to say doesn't make any sense. The problem is you, not them. It's like the guy who walks up to a woman and offers her, pizza in a night of sin. And when she says no, he's like, I guess she doesn't like pizza. No, the problem ain't the pizza, it's you. Whenever somebody says that a seller isn't motivated enough, or somebody complains about not finding motivated sellers, here's what they really mean. What they're really saying is one of two things. Number one, that the solution they provide is not in the seller's best interest, or number two, they need to get better at explaining stuff. And that's it. So they either need to work on the way that they explain what they do, or they need to do what they do better so it's in the best interest of more people. Remember, every seller is a motivated seller, or they wouldn't be a seller. So when people speculate on the level of motivation that a seller has, what they're really talking about is how unskilled they are and how unhelpful their solutions are. The problem is never the motivation of the seller. It's the skill of the buyer. It's your ability to help them and give them what's in their best interest, and your skill in building a business around that. And like I said, I know what I'm saying flies in the face of just about everything that's being taught, and it is an unpopular idea. I know that. But it's common sense, and in my experience, you will not build a serious company until you internalize what I've just said. So many people in real estate learn how to do something, and then they have to spend nearly all their time in business trying to find people who want that something done. But think about that. Just use common sense here for a second. The harder it is to find a problem for your solution, the more obsolete your solution is. The reason investors and the reason why the seminar world guys teach this stuff, and if you've been around them for even 10 seconds, you've heard it. But it's because that they're so desperate to have something to blame. They're so eager to point the finger at somebody else. And once they get an excuse or somebody who's willing to hear them explain why it's not their fault, if you give them a chance or a glimpse of something that they can blame instead of themselves, they'll jump all over it, man. They'll go nuts. It's like feeding a gremlin after midnight, And the issue of motivated sellers, it allows investors and potential investors to not only neglect the development of their skill, but they become so comfortable with their lack of it that it no longer is considered a problem. The focus moves from a business or an income, and it moves entirely to this delusional fixation on motivated sellers. It's like they turn into zombies, motivated sellers. It would be funny, but this process really is a destroyer of dreams. Take this for example. Let's take fictional Jack for example. He has a regular job, he isn't broke, but he isn't much better. Now he forgot to go to medical school, he forgot to have rich parents, and he forgot to win the lottery. So financially speaking, he isn't going anywhere unless he makes a big change. Just like me, just like you, just like 99% of people in America. Even though we're the top 5%, 99% of us are clueless and are sentenced to financial darkness unless we do something drastic. Now he knows he has to get into business, so he gets into real estate, but he doesn't really know what to do, so he starts to learn a few ways to do deals. But based on what he's learned, now he has to devote almost all his time to trying to find these elusive and usually mythical motivated sellers. The people that are so suicidal and so dumb that they won't care that Jack has no idea what the hell he's doing. And now, on the off chance that he does manage to get in touch with a seller like this, he's been taught to fake it till he makes it, and that's how he convinces a seller to trust him. Meanwhile, anytime he talks to a lender or an agent or another investor or somebody with private money, anybody, anytime he talks to anyone, it's this awkward conversation because Jack really doesn't know what he's doing. You see the situation, right? He's got a job, he wants to replace that income, but even if he does a deal with this one seller, what's next? He has to go through all that craziness all over again. So he looks into another way of getting into real estate. Maybe it's rehabs, maybe it's bank-owned deals, maybe it's commercial real estate, maybe it's lease options, maybe it's subject to. You see the pattern here, right? He's scouting motivated sellers left and right, but every time he tries to put a deal together, something falls apart. Maybe it's a seller, maybe it's a bank, maybe it's getting funding. And through all this, Jack doesn't even know for sure if he buys a deal that he'll be able to sell it. And if he is able to sell it, will he make any money? The whole time he has no idea what he's doing. He started in real estate to create another income, but now he's gradually lowered his ambitions so much because even if he, manages to do a deal, he's still pretty much no closer to actually having an income or a business. So he settles on just looking for motivated sellers and maybe, hopefully, closing a deal. But the problem is that he lost sight of the big picture. Or consider Jill. Maybe she took the plunge and she's in real estate full time, but it's just that, full time. What she really has is a job, and she's out of business until her next closing. She's putting out fires all day, every day, and even though she calls her job a business, all her money relies on her effort. If she stops, so does the money. And what she may or may not admit is that the reality is Jill is blindfolded, walking on a tightrope, juggling chainsaws. At any moment, her world could come crashing down from the slightest turn in the market or a new piece of legislation or a skilled competitor. Anything could wipe her out. Jill might be making okay money, but a job is still a job. That's the cost of ignorance. And if I'm not describing you or somebody you know, then you're not in real estate, because that's the pitfall that almost every investor falls into. And I don't want to see that happen to you. This is a skill. It's not talent. This is a skill. It can be taught and it can be learned. My heart really goes out to the millions of people, to the masses who don't understand this, who don't get this. This is how you get, soccer mom Sally trying to talk down the price of a rehab. Then she has to price the market and put together a sales strategy, and then she has to get a loan, or she goes hat in hand trying to convince somebody with money that giving it to her isn't a terrible idea. And even if she does all that, then she has to negotiate and oversee the work being done, which is something she's never done. Or you get Tom, the accounting guy, who's out there trying to negotiate a short sale with the bank, which drags on for months and months and months. And he's out there trying to convince the BPO agent that the neighborhood is filled with crack houses so that he can get the bank to take his lowball offer that he doesn't even know if it's a good offer, if it's a lowball offer. He has no idea where he should be at price-wise. Or you get Patel, the IT guy, who just wants a piece of the American dream. That's what brought him to America, just like with my parents, just like with your parents, although probably not as recently as with my parents. But still, that's what brought all of our parents here. And he's out there wanting to make it happen, and he's trying to get an apartment building owner to take 100% financing because he heard about it in Seminar World. Or he's trying to get a seller to give him the deed to their house, even though there's really no good reason for them to do it. And this is how you get people on Facebook and Twitter. My goodness. You get them on Twitter and Facebook and trying to learn SEO and how to trick Google. All sorts of silly stuff. You see the problem here? And that's just the folks who are starting out. The ones who are already in real estate, whether it's part-time or full-time, how many of them have or are building serious companies? And I'll define what I mean by serious in a second, but for right now, let's just think of how many of them are building a company that will one day be sold for just $5 million, or just $3 million, or just $1 million. Not that you want to sell your company, but you want to be able to. How many of them are doing it? They always say if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And that's so true with your real estate business too. And that's why for almost everybody in real estate, the slightest gust of wind will put them out of business. And I'm talking about people who are in business full time. It happens every day. And it could be because of anything, because of the economy, the local market, a competitor, anything. But none of those external factors change how well your business runs. It shows how well your business runs. Those variables are just like the stroke of midnight to Cinderella. It just exposes you for who you really are. Strength is defined by resistance to damage. The better you build your company, the less you need to worry about what everybody else is worried about. And I know what I'm saying is not that popular. That's why I'm not asking you to believe anything I ever say. I'm just asking you to think. And if you come across a contradiction between what I'm saying and what traditional knowledge or traditional education will tell you, just compare the results. And I don't mean my results. I mean the results of my students, the people that I train, the people that my friends and I train. Because I'll tell you, I've had students in every type of market, super hot markets, dead and flatlining markets, markets that were dropping off a cliff, every type of market in every area in America and on every continent on the planet, from California to Calcutta, Boston to Budapest, Alabama to Australia, every age, from seniors and folks in their 90s to teenagers and kids of every race, from black and white and everything in between. And I can give you a student success story in every imaginable permutation of people, place, race, situation, background, education, income, experience, generation, you name it, anything. And I'm always bragging about these people. I'm always bragging about students. And the reason that I'm telling you this right now is because skill is only as good as it is universal. It's easy to say great things about your level of skill when you haven't seen much adversity, but talk is cheap. So make sure that you never listen to anybody or take advice from anybody unless they've tested their ideas in adverse situations. Not just a local market or a local market here and there. We only perform as well as we train. So you want to make sure that what you're being taught and what you choose to learn, what you're being trained with, has been put through hell. If you try and learn from somebody with limited ideas or limited exposure in just one or a handful of situations, markets, or conditions, the skill they will teach you has an extremely limited appliance. And if somebody only knows how to do things in their backyard and then they start telling you things about things that they don't know about, it's very obvious when people are telling you those things. From now on, it'll be really obvious when they're trying to tell you something that they have no idea about. And even if you learn something that is effective in your local market, you don't want to be limited to just your market, do you? No, of course not. Nobody does. You want to stretch globally, or at least be able to. And to do this takes a skill that almost nobody in the world knows how to do. But that doesn't mean you should settle. Remember, don't learn to spell a word. Instead, learn to use the dictionary. Most people are learning how to spell a word. And I've seen so many good people who come to me bruised and battered because they've been learning from people who have no business teaching. And the folks I'm talking about, man, they're taught things that are just crazy, but they seem sensible if you don't know any better. So much of what real estate investors are taught and what they believe is total nonsense. Why do they never put a business together? Why do they never get any momentum with any of the deals that they're lucky enough to do? Because of the limited thinking that fuels it's what is behind their approach. Why bother learning something that has such a narrowly applied use, or is only effective in carefully constructed simulations, or under conditions that are so convenient that they're imaginary? It's like the guy who takes a martial arts class and then he wants to show off by having you punch at him in slow motion and then he moves out of the way. It's like, really? Wow. Now I know what to do. Never again will I worry about getting mugged by somebody who moves in slow motion. You need real world skill that you can rely on in any condition, any circumstance, from any background or experience, at any time, in any way that you want. Your performance, your execution is only limited by the way that you train. And if you learn obsolete skills versus universal skills, you'll always be running along the sidelines waiting for that fairy tale moment that never comes. It's like you're chasing a rainbow at night. And with all these people, in the extremely rare case that they do actually do a deal and they actually make some money, what possible chance do they have of making a real difference in their financial situation? Even if they make money, they're still in jobs. They're not going to build anything long-term or anything of long-term value. You don't have to be like that. Take building your empire seriously. This is your baby. Don't neglect it. And yes, technically you can go out and endlessly chase your tail and blame motivated sellers or the economy or a competitor. Yes, you can neglect your business like that. Just like you can put your baby in a microwave. Doesn't mean you should. When you get this right, when you build your company correctly, any economy or market problems that people bellyache about, to you it'll be just a giant paper tiger. And your competitors will be as harmless to you as Blockbuster to Netflix. And the secret to doing that, what those 9 out of 10 or 99 out of 100 investors don't understand, the reason that each of them will become just another statistic, the whole problem is actually really simple. What they don't get, and the real goal that they have, even if they forgot, and this is what I mentioned earlier about the 10 to 30 grand a month and the only 2 ways to get there, understanding this is a crucial part of moving forward. I've said this many different times. This is about building a business. You need to get your company to make you at least 10 to 30 grand a month. And how you get there matters. You want to get there through relationships and goodwill. My students are modern day superheroes, and you can enter those ranks too, but not by being lazy or finding ways to give the least of yourself. You don't want to be one of those I buy homes guys that's out of business until his next deal. You need to learn the skill of building a serious company, one that can run and grow without you, one that you can sell even if you don't want to, one that you can sell, one that makes you at least 10 to 30 grand a month, and that you're able to start from zero and to do multiple times. So you have several little oil wells, each doing 10 to 30 grand a month. This is a skill, and like almost nobody in the world knows how to do it, let alone teach it. But just the fact that you're thinking about it, just the fact that you're going into this thinking that you're building a company that needs to get you 10 to 30 grand a month, it adds purpose to your movement, right? You can clearly determine what to focus on and what to ignore. It's why so many investors struggle when they're starting out. From now on, this will fuel each of your actions, each activity that you engage in. So I said we'd talk about the 10 to 30 grand a month, and we talk about the only two ways to get there. So here it is. The only two ways that you're ever going to get to 30 grand a month. And remember, the 30 grand a month is an important number. The skill that I want you to have is to be able to start a business from zero and go from zero to the 1%. The 1% is 30 grand a month and beyond. If you remember from our essay class, this journey just to the 1% normally takes 250 to 300 years. And it almost never happens for anybody in the world because almost nobody knows how to do it. But your goal of becoming a social architect is not only to get yourself there, and by the way, your only real option aside from winning the lottery or becoming a brain surgeon, your only real option of creating generational wealth is through business. So you need to get to 30 grand a month, and your business should act as a ladder, helping not just you get there, but it should help others do the same thing. That's what social architecture is all about. The 30 grand a month is important, but how you get there is important. And there's really only two ways that you'll ever get to 30 grand a month. Either you get there by accident, which is the same as getting lucky. So that's the first way, by luck or by accident. And the other way is through skill, on purpose. And that's basically it. The only way you will get your company, the only way you will start your company from zero and get to 30 grand a month is through luck or skill. And doing it by luck is possible. You can work hard enough and work long enough, and maybe you'll make 30 grand in a month. But making 30 grand a month regularly, as soon as we start adding more pieces, it becomes harder to do by luck. And when we start adding things like being able to do it in less than 20 hours a week without any cash or credit, and being able to do it multiple times, and each time that you do it, each company you spend less and less time with. When you build a company, eventually it runs and grows without you. As soon as we start, every time we add one of those extra factors, it starts making it, it makes it harder and harder to do by luck alone. And that's the thing to realize, is that if you're not building your company the right way, if you're not doing anything to get a company like that, then it will only happen by accident. And 30 grand a month certainly isn't the maximum, it's just the start. Also, the reason we use 30 grand a month is because we've talked about this before, it's what's needed to enter the 1%, and you want to help yourself get there, others get there. Same thing we just said a second ago. But it's important that you don't settle on this. You need to make that happen. Don't settle. Don't lower that number. It's okay to go higher, but definitely don't lower that number. And just realizing this is the goal. This is one of the first goals of becoming a social architect, to get here and then to raise others up here as well. Now, I've worked with so many people in real estate, and they don't really care about buying houses or doing deals. They just want to build their company. They just want to get to that income and help other people do it as well. So don't get caught up on the real estate. If you have a job right now, for example, you have a limited time to build your company. Let's say 20 hours a week. So you need to make every moment matter. You don't want to be out there chasing deals or in a situation where you know hundreds of ways to put a deal together, but you have no deals to work on because you think you need motivated sellers. The only way you're going to make centuries worth of progress in milliseconds is by being smarter. You've got to be smarter than the average bear. And like I said, I've walked countless people through every step of setting this up from all over the world and every imaginable background. I can tell you, you can do this. And the difference between them and the average folks has nothing to do with their income or their education or how smart they are. It all starts right here. They knew the game before they went into it. They knew they were going to build a company. And I really recommend that you get that same mentality right now. Keep your eye on the prize. From now on, if something is not going to support that 30 grand a month threshold of a company, then don't do it. Remember your real goal. Everything that we're going to talk about now, when we get into actually how to buy real estate, all this stuff plays a supporting role to this primary goal. Remember, you want to go from 0 to 30 grand a month in less than 20 hours a week with no money, no credit checks, etc., all that stuff. So everything that we're going to talk about is with that in mind. That's the fuel behind what we're doing. You want to spend less and less time and to be able to do it repeatedly, and eventually you don't want to spend any time at all with your company. You don't want to have to spend any time. You want to be obsessed and you want to keep making a difference, but you don't want to have to spend time with your company. Use that as our criteria as we move forward. Anybody can do this, but this is our criteria. So for example, when we talk about making money in real estate, there's basically 3 types of money that you get: money up front, money over time, and money later. Now, given our new criteria, unless you're making at least 30 grand a month, you don't want to focus on money over time or money later. Equity is going to do you almost no good. Neither will appreciation or monthly payments if you are making less than 30 grand a month. People that focus on that stuff really don't know what they're doing. So until we get past 30 grand a month, we don't focus on that stuff. Now that may sound a little bizarre. Some of the things I say do sound bizarre, but again, remember what we're doing is different than what other people are doing. You're trying to get in the 1%, meaning you don't want to be in that 99%. You don't want to be with the majority. This is something that almost nobody knows how to do. And although there are plenty of people that will tell you that I'm the best in the world at teaching this skill, that my friends and I are the best in the world at teaching this skill, I'm far too modest to agree. I agree about myself. I do agree with my friends. Everyone else I work with, they are the best in the world at it. But even if you and I don't work together, and if you never work with any of us, you should not lose focus of this goal. Everything that we're about to talk about, these are all tools in a much larger goal, and you don't want to lose focus of that goal. And since this is our goal, to build a company like this, the less that you need to do that, the better that you are. This is why what you want, what you need is to get artistic with this. The better the artist, the less important the brush becomes, the less important the canvas becomes. Eventually, you won't need motivated sellers or even sellers. You won't even need a house to be for sale to make a fortune on it. You won't even need a house. You won't even need real estate to make a fortune in real estate. That's when you know you're good. That's how you know you're getting good. The less and less that you need to accomplish your goals. So as we get into this, as we go over examples, keep in mind, this is like I said, the big difference between students and the people who make things happen and the people that don't is they understand what I just said going into it. They know the game going into it. It was all about being a social architect. That was their mentality going into it. And on top of that, you should understand a couple things that I've explained in other classes, the time value of money, basically the money now, money later, and money in between, like with payments over time, like we talked about a second ago, but also the difference in value. The difference in value between money later and money now. You should also understand the basics of private money, how financing and loans work. You should know what buying on terms means, and the three basic LTV, either below market value, at market value, or above market value. And with upside down houses, by the way, I'll address that in a separate class. I won't talk too much about that today, but there are a lot of ways you can work with them. Also, remember from our class on money is pretty much useless except for one thing. Money's only utility is in its use. You don't want money. You want transactions or control of transactions. Since money was invented over 2,000 years ago, the single biggest difference between the rich and the poor is that the rich spent their money on two things: getting educated and getting control of transactions. That's it. So real estate owning is not that important. To actually own the real estate is obsolete. It's inconsequential. It's much more important to control it, or to control and benefit from the transactions behind it. And remember, this has been studied since money was invented. The single biggest difference between rich and poor, and why even if their money is taken away, the rich get it back. The reason is because the rich people understand that the only way for their money to make money is when they put their money into controlling transactions. That's the only way that money ever comes back, and comes back is more. There's only one other investment that's better than controlling transactions, and that is getting educated to control transactions, because that investment can return the highest yield on money. By the way, that's a side lesson. You should start looking at paying for your education as an investment. Always be thrilled and happily pay for education, the right education at least. As long as that education is going to train you, is going to teach you how to control transactions, it will be the best financial decision that you ever make, because it's an investment. Poor people are discouraged by what it costs. Rich people are motivated by what they can make. In other words, poor people think of what it will cost them if they do. Rich people think about what it will cost them if they don't. That's why rich people love me, which brings up an interesting point, by the way. Do rich people love me, or do people who love me get rich? If nothing else, you're closer to getting richer, happier, and hotter, and an overall better person if you just start loving me a little more. That's just science for you. Okay, let's recap. So far, we covered the best interest policies, the mom principle, the biggest secret in the world about motivated sellers, and what you need to know about how useless and unnecessary they are. The only two ways you ever get to 10 to 30 grand a month. More on social architecture and why it's important to get 10 to 30 grand a month. And just thinking about that, going to 10 to 30 grand a month at 20 hours a week, the loan and credit, not having to go through that, or banks or money down, etc. And we just went over money's use and its only utility. Much like real estate, it's simply a mechanism of controlling transactions. So everything we're about to talk about is just a means to an end. Let's get into it. The 30 ways of buying real estate, zero down. So this way, at least we're able to get our countdown started in part one. Okay, so number 1 of 30, seller financing. Let's say it's a $100,000 property. And by the way, the numbers never matter. You can adjust them to whatever you're used to working with, but the numbers don't matter. It's the concept that matters. It's the concept that's important. So $100,000 property that's worth $100,000. And let's say the bank is going to finance $80,000. So you're going to get a loan for $80,000 to buy the property. And by the way, when you get a loan, you're not going to use your credit. We'll talk about that later, but $80,000 loan, which leaves another 20%. In this case, 20% of $100,000 is $20,000. So instead of coming up with the cash, you could tell a seller that instead of paying them the $20,000 right now, you'll make them payments every month. They can make more money this way. And as always, whenever you finance anything, you can always make more money. And we'll talk about this more later, but you can buy any piece of real estate, or really anything in the world, for any price. You can buy pretty much anything at pretty much any price under the right conditions. Like I said, we'll talk about that more later. So they can make more money this way in exchange for the time, because you're going to to make on payments, and you'll pay more than the $20,000. So the seller can make more money, but it does mean they're not going to get that money right now. This is not for all sellers, so it's up for you to make sure you do what's in their best interest, right? And like I said, for that $80,000, you don't want that loan to be in your name. If you're starting out, you do not want to use your own money or credit. Even if you're not starting out, you don't want to, but definitely not if you're starting out. And since we're talking about money right now, I won't talk too much about credit, but I covered the sell source, so you want to make sure you go through our other stuff. Okay, so that's number one. And you know what? I want to make sure that we break these sessions up at least somewhat evenly. And since you and I were able to get through a lot of stuff already, this will be the end of part one, and then we'll pick up on part two. And in part three, the whole time we'll just go over the 30 ways to buy real estate zero down and how to do zero down deals. A lot of this also applies to companies, even though we're going to focus on real estate. So we'll talk about how to put these deals together, what students are doing, all sorts of cool stuff. Before we go though, remember all of this, everything that we're talking about, these are all tactics. These are all tools to reach our main goal. These are all a means to an end, to a much more significant end, the process of being a social architect. Remember that when we talk about all this stuff, this is the goal, to buy and sell companies and real estate with no money down, no credit checks, no loans, no banks, eventually without leaving your house. And on each deal that you do, you want to make $10,000 to $30,000 a month. On each deal that you do, at the very least, that's how much money you should be making, 10 to 30 grand a month. And you want to spend less and less time with each company. Eventually, each company should run with a single conference call once a week, if that. You gradually minimize your role, you subtract yourself to where those companies run and grow without you. That's one part, but remember, the social architecture, being a social architect, has more steps than that. You want the business, you want the companies that you build to be ladders for others as well, not just for yourself. So that being our overall goal, the less you need to make this happen, the better you are, the more skilled you are. So the better you are, the less you need to accomplish this. So that's why we're here, to get exponentially better and make a generational impact. And that's the goal. That's what should animate your spirit. That's what should keep you up at night, what should give you butterflies. And if that does not happen for you, then you have no soul, and I'm talking to the wrong person. Just kidding. But that's not the case anyway, right? We're on the same page, you and I, right? Of course we are. And you know, when you focus on a better objective, you become a better person, and everybody around you sees it. They feel the aura. Whatever level they're at, you wear your ambitions like a perfume. We just got to make sure we pick the right fragrance. Okay, so that's it. That's the end of part one. We'll pick up right here on part two, and then we'll keep going into part three. Also, by the way, WeBuildEmpires.com. If and when applications are being accepted, you want to be all over it, man. You want to be all over it. Make sure you get yourself trained. You want to be all over it like a zombie I buy homes guy on motivated sellers, brains. You want to be all over it. WeBuildEmpires.com. Okay, I'll see you in part two. Take care. Thank you so much, as always, for all the support. I really appreciate it. Thanks. We'll talk soon. God bless.